This show is incredible. What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. I am back with another review, and this is for On My Block Season 2. I just recently caught up and watched Season 1, blown away completely, and unexpectedly fell in love with these characters, fell in love with this show, what it represents, and the way that it goes about showcasing the humor and the characters and the interactions. Today, I'm going to be talking about Season 2 and telling you guys how it compares to Season 1, and if this show is worth watching and binging. I'm going to go ahead and answer that. Yes. And here's how I'm going about today's review. I am spoiling one plot point. The only plot point that I'm going to talk about is in episode 1. Otherwise, I'm going to stay away from the rest of the show because it's going to be hard to talk about this without talking about that one thing, because it's very integral to where the rest of the season goes. So if you have watched episode 1, then you're going to be fine for the rest of this review. If you haven't watched episode 1 of season 2, you can stick around for the next few minutes. I'm going to give you guys some general thoughts and then talk about that one plot point and how it affects my overall thoughts of the show. But right now, let's talk about On My Block. Don't worry, I'll warn you guys. So On My Block is a coming-of-age story about 4 bright, street-savvy friends navigating their way through high school in the gritty inner city of South Central Los Angeles, dealing with the danger of getting their friend out of a gang and friends turning into romance. Danger is constant. In general thoughts, here's what I love about On My Block. This is a comedy. This is a coming-of-age story. It's 4 friends trying to discover themselves, and then they realize that life is a lot harder than it looks, especially the older you get. This show does not just deal with friendship and racism, all of the things you expect from a premise like this. It also showcases a lot of crime and drugs and the gangs of inner cities and how they go about affecting kids of this age, the parents included, but mostly the kids. But what I think is so cool about this show is it's not overly dramatic. It's definitely emotional, and it definitely is dramatic and thrilling at times, but it's a comedy. On My Block is a funny show with wacky characters and really out-of-this-world situations every now and then. And it does, in a way, throw me back to the time when I was watching these Disney Channel original shows before they got really wacky like they are now. But even though they got in these situations that were completely out of line, they had these characters that you gravitated to when you were that specific age. Now, this is definitely a show that is not in the vein of a Disney Channel show, but I do feel the same way about the characters and the situations because they do get a little crazy. They do get a little bit out there, but I love that because it's so funny and you love all of these actors so much that you get invested and you're worried about the relationships and you care about maybe who doesn't want to come back home and live, who loves who, what families feel a certain way about other kids, maybe because they got themselves in these situations. All of that conflict is incredible, and it makes On My Block a show that brings you all of these aspects and manages to balance all of these tones. It all comes together in such a beautiful way. Every time I go from one episode to another episode, I am so invested in where it's going to go, and every episode seems to leave you on a little cliffhanger, and the way they go about that, starting with the first episode of Season 1, has been awesome. But you're always worried about where Caesar and Monse and Jamal, where they're going to go. Ruby, all of these characters that have been built up for so long, and then where Season 1 left off on that integral cliffhanger was the ultimate cliffhanger and put all of those other cliffhangers for certain episodes to shame. I love the way that they ended Season 1, and I was curious to see where Season 2 was going to pick up and what aspect of the story it was going to tell. And here's where I get into episode 1, just so you guys are warned, just so you know. Ruby's back. I mean, the whole team's here. You expected nothing less, I know, but some people were still like, oh my goodness, what actually happened? I know the trailer came out and it tried to surprise people, but really we knew that this was going to go in the slight direction that I anticipated, and certainly it did, and I'm okay with that. I love Ruby as a character. I think it's incredible what they're doing with him, suffering the loss of the woman, the girl that he was growing to love. I thought that was such an emotional impact, and every time he breaks down, whether it's hearing a noise or hearing a certain song playing on the radio, all of that manages to get to him. It's a bit of a PTSD effect, and I love exploring that, especially in a character so young. We always see this in characters in movies when they're older and they've been through a lot and they've suffered through a lot, but someone this young, suffering, being shot, and someone else in their lives getting killed, and then having to cope with that and try to deal with that through throughout this season is one of the more interesting aspects of this show, and it's one of the things that just continues to keep me coming back. It keeps me hooked. His entire family, I think, is awesome. His relationship with his mother, exploring that, and the idea of religion coming into that and slightly separating them, but they have to work through that as a family. And speaking of family, all of the kids' parents, maybe people that come into their lives that are like parents, this season goes in many interesting directions. And I don't want to spoil 2 plot points in particular that I'm thinking about that just kind of caught me off guard and kept me on my toes as a viewer, because it's like, okay, we're going to solve this problem in episode 3. Episode 4 comes along, a brand new issue has just arisen, and always, what I love about the show and what it keeps consistent is that there's one problem, well, actually 2 problems happening in the background, and sometimes they focus on it, sometimes they let these other story points and plot points come in, develop, do their time, and then get out of the way, and we're back to what really is at hand here. And there are 2 major storylines at play in Season 2, similar to Season 1. We have the money and the money laundering and what they're going to do with that, and the exploration of the idea that this is cursed. Cracks me up. It's hilarious. The wackiness that I was talking about earlier in the review, a lot of it has to do with that money and the curse, and how Ruby's abuela comes into play, and the truce that they make, and going about figuring out, what are we going to do with this? Should we destroy it? Should we use it? Should we launder it? It's great, and I love that storyline, but once again, it's not always the forefront of the story. They allow these other ideas to come in and play a really big role in Season 2, and I love that. Caesar and Monse's relationship is great, her relationship with her father, but that kind of triangle of trying to figure out, okay, what should we do? And then there's a certain story element that comes into play. I'm not going to spoil what that is, but I loved it. It kind of threw me off, but then I'm like, you know what? This is interesting. It brings a whole new aspect to the story, and I thought that was great. Jamal dealing with the curse. I mean, he is probably the funniest character, in my opinion, him and Ruby both, but he is great. Always brings this element of humor and levity when things start to get a bit too dark and a bit too emotional, and once again, balancing the humor with the really dark aspects at time is perfect in this show, and I think it's even more well handled in Season 2 than it was in Season 1. If you're asking me to compare the 2 seasons, it's hard to do that because I love them both so much. But I think I like Season 2 more because I think we're learning more about these characters. They're getting older. They're developing. They know they have to stick together, and they're starting to realize what it's like to grow up and how scary it's continuing to get, because you have parents hiding kids because of everything that's happening with these gangs and with these 2 groups of people that are basically at war throughout the entire season. And you know they're after certain characters that we know and love, and we don't want them to get to. And we know that they can, because we saw in Season 1 that death is not something they're going to stray away from. This is a story that is trying to be as real life as humanly possible, so we know our characters may or may not be safe, and who knows, maybe one of them will go, maybe one of them could go in a future season, and as an audience member, that keeps me on my toes. That makes me invested into what these characters are going to do with their lives, and how the relationships are going to grow, and how all of that can be taken away from them just like that. And that's the fear that these characters have, that you should have, based on something that does happen to people in real life. And I can't personally relate to what these guys are going through. And at times I sit back, I watch, and I go, it's not fair what some people have to go through, how they live in fear, and they're always in these situations that they can't help, because these are just kids, right? They're just young children who get stuck and put in these situations, and not even necessarily by their parents. They're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's sad to watch. It's a show that hits on all of those things. It doesn't stray away. It's not afraid to showcase the true horrors of living in a place like that, and I love it. And it's just another reason why On My Block surprised me. It is one of my favorite shows of the year so far, one of my favorite seasons of the year so far. I can't say shows because Season 1 came out last year, but guys, On My Block, if you're not watching this show, first off, I may have spoiled an aspect of Season 2 for you. But second of all, if you're watching it, I need you guys to tell me, get in the comments section down below. Have you been enjoying On My Block? Do you love it? Do you not love it? Do you have issues that maybe I don't have, that maybe I haven't brought up? There are a few plot points here where, you know, they go in places and I'm like, could we get back to the main storyline? Still not a huge fan of Jasmine's character. She is a little overly annoying. I know that's what she's supposed to be, but I'm just like, I don't know if I love her yet. But overall, On My Block Season 2 is just really great television. I'm going to give this a 92%. I think it's my favorite season of the year. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and look through everything, but I really enjoyed what I saw. And I need you guys, like I said, to get in the comment section down below. Be sure to like this video if you enjoy my Netflix binge watching. This is the third show I've binged this weekend. I do it for you guys because I love to tell you guys my thoughts. And if a show is worth watching or not, I think that's very important, especially in the age that we are living in with streaming. And then, we have another show coming out tomorrow. I believe the name of it is Ultraman. That is an anime coming out on Netflix. Very excited to binge that and watch that. A lot of movies dropping this week, more Netflix content as well. Earlier today, Justice League versus the Fatal Five. Check that out. And the best and worst of March is coming tomorrow morning. Be on the lookout of that. You are the absolute best once again, and I will catch you very soon.